Thank you. I'd like to thank Indy for making this vendor friendly. We really appreciate that and having an opportunity to be part of this. That's very nice. So Tommy Creel, Chief Resource Officer at Adepto and Pio. That's what I call myself. Adepto is all things infusion pumps. So we rent, sell service pumps all over the country. We have our technicians in-house. We do, I'd say, 95% of the repairs in-house. Certain things that nobody can do, software flashes, different things. Those are things we'll send to the OEM. Pioneer Biomedical is all things patient monitoring. Same type of deal. Have technicians in-house. Rent, sell, and service all over the country. Adepto was started by myself in 2011. Pioneer was started by Dan Chapman, tall guy, silver hair, you'll see walking around. Funny guy, so don't laugh too hard at his jokes. In 1994, we're both located in Kansas City. 2-3 years ago, we partnered. Now have one owner. Myself, so single ownership. We're under one roof. He had such a nice reputation, as did Adepto. We didn't want to rebrand or do anything, so both things come shipped to and from the same location, but monitors for the most part are Pio Bio, pumps are Adepto. We don't have a big marketing and sales team like a lot of our competitors. Not to say that's the wrong way to go by any means. We both organically grown over the years, and so a lot of folks probably have not heard of us, and hence the reason why we're here. India started doing these mixers the past 2 or 3 years where it's kind of a regional show, not a big national expo. We were fortunate enough to have one in September in Kansas City. I got to talk to John Creed quite a bit, and he said, there's a lot of opportunities. You guys have a wonderful facility. Chris Nowak was there. He was a speaker in Kansas City, and he said, I haven't heard of you guys, even though we had done business with some of the UHS hospitals. So a little bit of a knock against me for not marketing and selling properly, but a great opportunity for us to come here and let you guys know we are an option for pumps and monitors. I would say all the companies here are great companies, offer wonderful customer service. If they wouldn't have stuck around this long, they wouldn't be here. But just so you all know, we are an option should you have the need, and as the hospital communities grow, and especially with what has happened the last 2 to 3 years, we know there's a shortage of biomeds on-site work, and customers can be shipped all over. Go to our website, fill out a form, you get a prepaid UPS FedEx shipping label. It'll be emailed to you, and you can send your equipment in. We have no cost if you deny, or for a checkout fee, we have no trouble. So no minimum charge. And again, we rent self-service all over the country. And with that, we'll turn it back over. And yeah, appreciate it. And we have a booth here. I really should know our booth number. I don't, but maybe that'll help everybody walk around. So,
thanks for your company. You brought us quite a bit.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, that's great. We got a couple of great customers. So yeah, we appreciate all the support from all the hospitals. And again, we really don't call folks that we're not doing business with. We should. We do follow up with our current customers, and we need to educate our current customers on what more we can do. So thank you, all of our customers.
Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Harris, who is presenting maintaining hospital beds and nurse call systems.
Thanks. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Harris. I'm the director of HTM at a hospital called Texoma Medical Center. We're a 414-bed facility about an hour north of Dallas. We have a in-house HTM department consisting of 5 technicians plus myself, and we maintain everything from beds and the nurse call system, obviously, up to full service on like CT, and we do a little bit of MRI. We're starting to get into that, first look, and planned maintenance. So we try to wrap our hands around as much as we can in-house to provide value there. And whenever you got into this line of work or this career field, working on a bed may not have been your reason for being in. you probably had ventilators or anesthesia machines or something high end like an imaging device on your mind, myself included. But when you talk about the significance and the value that you can provide to your facility, if you're maintaining the hospital beds and nurse call system, it's significant. And when I got into this career, I would hear guys talk, and there seem to be two schools of thought on beds and the nurse call system. Some people would say beds belong with client ops, they're not that advanced, they don't belong with HTM. Or you'll hear, gosh, that's just so much work. Think about all that work we would have to do. We have to hire more people, and IT does the nurse call system. They always have. It's fine. Just leave that alone. But when we started taking care of hospital beds and the nurse call at my facility, I quickly realized that out of most of the things we work on, this is one of them that it really matters to. It makes a difference for the nurses and the patients. And so that's what I'm going to get into a little bit here, and along the way or afterwards. First of all, how many show of hands people are you already maintaining beds in your programs? Oh wow, okay, that's good. I didn't know you guys worked here. That's cool. Well, good. So then I'm not trying to act like I have all the answers here. There's a few challenges we still face every day with beds, and if you guys have any suggestions, or if there's time after, we'll have some chance to talk about it. Please bring it up. So to start off, I'll ask you all the question, why are we here? That's not the meaning of life question. I'd love to discuss that with everyone. As maybe we have time after, get philosophical, but I mean, why are we here as HTM? What's our main purpose at the hospital? So one of the obvious things we do, we have to make sure that equipment's working, right? We have to repair medical devices. If that doesn't happen, patient care can't really take place. So that's the obvious one. So then you start to get into ways we can go above and beyond and provide extra value. So we, in various ways, we make sure that the equipment is properly utilized. That might be helping the staff mitigate the same problem or failure that they're doing over and over again. We might have a setting we can enable, or some suggestions on how they can better provide care to their patients through the use of equipment. And you all know what I'm talking about. There's many ways we do that. And then the last one, we've got to make sure that equipment is maintained with financial awareness. If you're not paying attention to the financial piece, your program could be at risk. And we all know that that's important as well. So the next thing I'll ask you all, can you think of the medical device that touches almost every patient that comes in the door of the facility? Pretty sure you guys know where I'm going with this. It's a bed, a stretcher, or the nurse call system. Nearly every patient is going to interact with that. And it didn't take long to see that if the bed has limited functionality, if it's uncomfortable, or if there's a problem with the nurse call system and they can't call for help, for obvious reasons, that can cause issues at your facility with your patient and your customer experience scores that your hospital gets and that they try to improve on. So if you think about what our role is in the hospital, what is our main objective? If you're really there and you believe that what we do is to provide the best support that we can for the staff, the beds in the nurse call system, I mean, who should be working on those? And I believe it's us. By maintaining the beds in the nurse call system at your facilities, you're going to help improve patient care just by being there to assist nursing day to day. You can justify to add staff to your team, solidify that staffing model. What I mean by solidify is, when you're maintaining a core function like bed maintenance and nurse call support, how is the facility going to say, get rid of a few of those guys? We can do without them. It's going to be a lot harder for them to pull people away from you. During the pandemic, when it first kicked off, a lot of hospitals were getting really worried because elective procedures were stopped, and the financial constraints were real. Luckily at my facility, I didn't have to furlough any employees. We took a little bit of mandatory PTO, but not nearly as much as some of the other departments had to take. And I feel like that's because, how are you going to tell people to go home when they're the ones that are keeping the beds and the nurse call system up and running? That's vital. So it can protect your staff. Another thing is, the beds in the nurse call system, they're becoming more and more advanced every year. The beds aren't what they were 10 years ago. So the people that say, the beds are easy, plan ops can handle those, somebody else can handle that, or just put it on a contract. I don't think that's true. I've got a guy on my staff that, he worked on CT for 20 years, and he can even scratch his head sometimes with a critical care bed. So we're not above this technology. And the fact that it is becoming more advanced, it has more features. The nurses need us there to be that technical expert that they can ask questions to. They don't have to wait till the guy from the vendor, the service contract shows up. And then obviously you can save money. Anytime we pull something in-house and start working on it, instead of having it on contract, you're obviously going to save money there. After we took on the beds and we started servicing the nurse call system as well, I would hear, I'm sure at your facilities, you guys try to mitigate falls. There's always a big effort to reduce patient falls. That's a problem at most hospitals, I think. So I asked the question, why aren't we connecting the beds to the nurse call system? And the answer that I got was, well, we looked into that, we tried it in the past, and we were told it won't work. It doesn't work. I don't see why it wouldn't work. We have a connector on the wall, the bed. You just need to hook the cable up to it. What do you mean it doesn't work? And I never got to the bottom of who told them that or why. But the first thing that I do when I hear something like that, and I'm told you can't do this, and in my mind, there's no reason why we can't. I want to go try and see if it'll work. Right? It's a puzzle. It's a challenge. So I did, and found out that it does work. So I, got the word out on that, and everybody just was like, great, thank you, because we were told that we couldn't do this, and now you're saying we can. So this coincided close to the time when planned maintenance was due on the beds anyway. So my team, we got all the cables and we hooked them up to the wall and showed them how to set it up, and we were off after that. And a few months went by, and we were in a meeting. I don't remember if it was Patient Safety Council or what meeting, but one of the main nursing leaders in med-surg departments was being faced with some criticism that the other leaders were saying, I don't think everybody's setting the bed exit alarm on the beds. I don't think we have enough compliance there. And she kind of had this attitude that many of you may have encountered, where it's like she kind of just had given up and threw her hands up and just said, this is too difficult. We can't. It's a little bit confusing. We don't know how to hook it up. And I didn't know what she was talking about, because it seems pretty straightforward to us, like the technical people. So after the meeting, I said, show me what you mean. What are you talking about? You don't know how to hook it up. There's a cable, there's a breakaway point. And we went up to one of her rooms, and she looked me dead in the eye and held up a cable. Now you see this piece right here. We can obviously look at this ourselves as technical people and know that this has no connected path to the bed, right? This is a terminator cap. Some nurse call systems, if you don't have the system, capped off that'll alarm constantly. Ours isn't like that, but that's why that's there. So she held this up, both in her hand, and she looked at me and said, "Which one do I connect to the wall?" And it was that, we have moments like this in our careers, but this was a really defining moment for me because I already knew that sometimes, they're not all tech people. I'm not going to throw that blanket statement on all nurses. Some of them are, and they're like with us, but a lot of them, they need our help and they need our support to explain these things to them. And that's when it really hit home for me because she wasn't trying to be difficult. She wasn't trying to, joke around. Like she literally didn't understand that. I mean, look, there's even a screw right here. Like it's obvious, right? It's not obvious. And with that, we can be that technical expert that's there. Who else is going to go up there? And who else is there every day around them, picking up IV pumps, whatever else is broken? Like we can be there to help them. And it goes a long way. So we assist with ongoing education, like everything else that we work on. Well, I don't know if any of you have ever worked on a project with caregivers, and once you get past one hurdle, there's just another one waiting after. It's like, oh, well, now this is happening. Okay. So then after they figured out how to connect it, the problem became, we don't really understand how to arm this bed exit alarm. That part's a little confusing to us. We had staff, zeroing the scale with patients in the bed. And to us, that seems like a no-brainer, right? You can't zero a scale with a patient in there. I don't know why they do it. I stopped asking myself why caregivers do what they do a long time ago. It's just something that happens. So the education doesn't all fall on us. A lot of times it means you need to get a vendor in there, but we can be the ones that get that alert. It's like, okay, you guys need help. You need help outside of how I've got people that can train you, but we don't have the resources to be there for the amount of training sessions that we need. So we brought, you can bring in a vendor, but in this case, we did create a how-to, and I'm sure you guys, we do stuff like this all the time with different things, but it showed them how to set bed exit alarms specific to our model, and that helped them a lot. And this got passed down through all the nursing leaders. So now let's move to the nurse call system a little bit. One thing that I didn't like is if I needed to make a change on my nurse call system, I had to rely on a distributor. I only had one distributor in my area that was capable of programming my system. So when you get told, hey, this is an example that I can speak on. A nurse would come to me and say, in my area, we just found out that this console way down here at the far end, a code blue went off and it didn't alarm down there. Can you fix that? And well, we can't, but we can call a vendor to fix it. So you call the vendor and they're like, yeah, we got a lot going on. There's a lot of installs lately. We could be there, next Friday. Well, even though this has probably been like that for a couple of years, who knows how long. The fact that now it's an issue, I don't know about y'all, but that's the kind of stuff that might keep me up at night. Wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're like, God, I hope that doesn't happen. So I didn't like having to wait and be on their schedule. And I asked, why can't we program our own system? And we found out that you can, and it's just a matter of getting the right training and learning about it. And you guys know this. Anytime we take something on, there's a lot of investigation and reading and learning that goes on. And so that's what we did. Like I said, it allows you to make changes quickly. So back to the alarm integration thing. I was talking about the hurdles. Well, after they figured out how to hook the cables up, set the bed to alarm, the next problem was, this alarm's going off for the bed exit. We're setting the alarms, but it sounds a lot like the normal call. And it's just not grabbing our attention. So we're we need, is there a different sound? Maybe, and we had already known how to program the system, so I looked and figured out, yeah, there's a sound we can use, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best sound, and we made a custom light pattern that went off that didn't look like anything else they had, and we had this. We made this little test setup that way we could test components in the shop with, test a wall station and a pillow speaker, and we used it to show the leaders what we had come up with and to see if they thought that would work. Another thing they said is whenever an alarm goes off, you guys can't see that, but it says bed alarm. That's what we changed, because often, I don't remember what it said, but it was like a generic statement. It says something like plug out or alarm and then the room number. It didn't say anything about a bed exit. So we did a custom little statement there that they would know what the alarm was. And after that, we showed them and they agreed, and then that coincided along the same time as our annual nursing training competency carnival, or whatever I'm sure you guys have something like that at your facility. So we actually were able to put this in there, and it was one of the stations that they had to go and see the new sound, and so that they would be aware of this change. When you talk about programming your nurse call system, one thing I'll say is that, and for obvious reasons, you got to be careful, right? These sounds are ingrained in their subconscious. Like, they don't even hear it. Sometimes they just act. So if you're going to put a new sound in there or change one of the sounds that they already know, that's a big deal. Like, you need to spread the word. And even after you do all you can, you do this, inevitably there's some people that somehow missed out on this communication, or they didn't get to hear it. So yeah, it goes without saying, but just be careful if you're going to change it. And after we implemented the new sound, got the word out, then the complaint was, this sounds like the staff assist call. The day it went live, a few of those complaints started coming in. So I went up to the floor and started talking to them, and it didn't sound like the staff assist call. The problem was, before this alarm was implemented, the only two urgent alarms we had were a code blue and a staff assist. Well, we made this is an urgent alarm sound. It's not, it doesn't sound like a staff assist or a code blue, but it's a third urgent sound. And that, like I said, when you change these sounds, it really gets them on edge, because it's something new and they have to learn that. So once we kind of explained it, the complaints went away. And that was the end of our hurdle at that point. Like, we had addressed every problem, and years have gone by, and they're still using the bed exit alarm that we implemented. Now there's still, every day, we're teaching nurses on the spot. It didn't work because, you got to check the breakaway point. It wasn't plugged in. Make sure it's plugged in when the patient gets in, or when the room's getting clean, it's got to get plugged back in. So, that never goes away. But those big hurdles, we finally got past them all. And I feel like it's helped them.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you ever correlate all that work? So there's a lot of effort, you have heavy lift, dive in, so many different parts to the process. Did you ever correlate that to falls and what it did on the back end?
Yeah, that's tricky, because that whole process that I just went over, that probably took about a year to transpire from start to finish. And so the data during that time, I didn't want to look there, because I wanted to see it after it fully had taken place. And then the pandemic, obviously, that I didn't want to look at the pandemic data, because then you have patients in the room, and nurses were limited on how many times they would want to go in there. And our fall, I think that affected our fall rate. I think overall our falls have gone down. I don't have data to support that in this presentation, but in general they have. But there's a lot of factors with falls too, and so but No, I don't have data to support that here.
How about staff satisfaction?
Well, that, yeah, of course, yeah, they have expressed a lot of gratitude for that whole project and us being there to keep it going. So yeah, there's a lot of that. So the next thing the next problem I chose to seek out with related to bed management was I would hear in the morning huddles arguments about beds and how do we get a bed when we need one? I've got this bed on in my hallway. It doesn't have it's not broken. It's just there. I don't know who put it there. Who moves it? Where is it supposed to go? And all we had were different opinions and suggestions. We didn't have a defined, process about all of these things. So I asked my CNO at the time because I had like a rough draft idea in my head. I said, if I come up with a process, will you support it and make sure that it gets, adhered to? And she said, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. And so once I had her support, I moved forward with my idea. But basically what we did is I found two locations on the med-surg areas that we could use to store a bed. And this had been talked about in the past, but I didn't have the administrative support at the time to implement this, because when you start talking about different departments and what you're going to store in their areas, they all have their own ideas about what that space is for, right? Oh, we're special up here because we have more of these type of patients, and we have, patient lifts that go there or whatever it is. But the CNO made it clear that, yeah, we can make sure this happens. And so we were able to mark certain spots on each floor and designate them for beds. And the nurses had already expressed that they had trouble determining the difference between certain types of beds just by looking at them. So we came up with the color coding scheme, and each bed location has a poster like you see here, and indicates where they can look to see the color to know what type of bed it is. And each day in the morning huddles, each department states how many beds they have in their locations and if they're empty. And that way, it tells us, one area might have some extra beds in unauthorized locations on their floor. Then we know, okay, well, this other floor has none in there, so they can be moved up there. And then clear definitions were put in place about who moves the beds and when it's appropriate. So EVS moves beds unless they're broken. If it's broken and needs to be moved for a repair, then we're responsible for moving that. So that process was put in place, and it's been also very appreciated, and it's still, that CNO has moved on. We have a new CNO, but that process is still in place and being utilized. Another thing that was confusing some of the staff, there would be a bed in the hallway, and it wasn't in one of these authorized locations, and it didn't have a note on it, but the nurses were always reluctant to use it because they thought maybe somebody ditched it in the hallway because it's broken. And sometimes they put little napkins that say broke on a bed. They don't take it, they lay that on there. So we came up with a form that we use, and I told the staff, look, if you guys put in a work order, if we respond to a bed and we can't fix it on the spot, this form will show you that it is in repair. That way everybody knows what's going on. And this helped not only them, but my team. One thing I'll say about beds, if you are going to take on beds or you're thinking about it, you gotta determine, okay, am I going to have a few techs that are trained on beds and that's who does it? Or the philosophy I implemented was, I don't want to have a bed guy. I don't want to have one poor guy that that's all he does, So everybody does beds in my program, even the imaging engineers, if they want to work on imaging, they also have to work on beds and everything else that we do. So that's worked out for us, but each facility is different. You know, if you have a big program, I only have 5 techs. If you have more than that, you might want more of a honed-in approach. It just depends on your facility and your team, really. But that's how we do it. This is a document here that our Hillrom rep helped us create. But it's just a guide that shows the staff what kind of beds we have and then what the colors that go with them.
Ryan, can you?
Yeah.
Can you go back one slide? Can we talk a little bit, so you have different colors for different services. Where do you place them on the bed?
Sure. So where we put them on the bed, and I forgot to mention that we use this also as like our PM indicator. So we have there's a little bar label that we put on the frame right there at the wheelbase, because if you put it, we chose that location because if you put it somewhere up here, patients in the bed, you can, or if the sheet's draped over the edge, you can't really see anything on the side rail. So we put it down low, that way you can always see it.
Is that just on one form or both?
We put that on one side, the foot end. We put one here and then on the other side as well. That way, no matter which direction you look at it, you can see the color. Yeah.
So you have, we'll go back to that one. You have, no, that, how many different beds you have in your hospital?
So, well, no, this is a document that came from Hillrom, and so everything was put on here. Like we rent these, everybody, to my knowledge, rents the Clinitron. I don't think they sell these, the Sandy bed. Yeah, this is like a specialty bed that you can only rent. So we didn't color code those. We don't have all of these at my facility. Only the ones we chose to color are shown there. Yeah, yeah. Like we don't have the Excel care. So.
What are your sensor beds, right?
Yeah, luckily we got rid of most of our old stuff. But yeah. This is a project that I'm still fighting with today. This is one of the ones that if anybody has an idea or a solution that they come up with, please help me, because quickly after taking on the beds, my equipment damage numbers went through the roof, right? Because the nurse call system and the beds get torn up all the time from people forgetting to unplug things when they move it out of the room. You know, if you've ever moved a bed out of a room, I won't tell anybody if you admit to it. We may have done this too, right? We always preach, hey, make sure you unplug stuff, don't yank it out of the wall. If you're in a hurry or you've got a lot on your mind, you may have done this once in your life. So how do we mitigate that? I was, you know, and I tried all the obvious stuff, you know, communication, put it out on the monthly blurb that goes out to all the staff. Hey, make sure you check make sure everything's unplugged. I'm fortunate to have some time at every new hire orientation. I get to speak for 15 minutes, and that's my chance to like get anything I want to in front of the staff that's coming in. This is one thing that I tell them is please make sure you unplug things when you move a bed out of a room, because it does considerable damage to the nurse call system, our beds, I mean, everything. And my equipment damage numbers suffer from that problem. And after racking my brain, the last thing I could come up with is I got to figure out. I know why beds move. I know why patient transports occur with a patient in the bed. Sometimes they're critical, right? If they're a critical patient, they have to move on the bed. They can't put them in a wheelchair or a stretcher. But when I would talk to different leaders and ask them, are we moving everybody that can be moved on a wheelchair and stretcher on them? And some of them would say, no, you know, sometimes we just can't find a stretcher or a wheelchair, and so we move them on a bed. And the only idea that I could come up with to find out, because I didn't even know who was doing it, was to track it. So they already had a transport log where they documented, you know, what room number, where they went, and all we did was add what the transport method was. That way I can see which departments move patients the most on the bed and make sure that they were doing all they could to move whoever they could on a wheelchair instead. And again, out of all the projects I worked with the beds, this is the one that I'm still looking for a good solution today, because just because you get that data, you know, I can tell when I did this analysis, most of the transfers that take place on a bed are to imaging and surgery. It's just how do you know that all of them were appropriate? That's the kicker. And the only other thing I can think of is to talk to the actual transporters that move them. So that's going to kind of be my only idea I have next is just talk to them and say, how often do you guys move people on beds just because you can't get a wheelchair or a stretcher? But another thing to consider is the surface and the contamination that takes place. So the FDA released a notice back in 2013 and 2017. ECRI put it on their top 10 health technology hazards for 2018. Just honestly ask yourself, you know, is there a process at your facility for inspecting that mattress? Who's looking at the mattress? When EVS cleans the bed, are they actually cleaning underneath the mattress? Go look under a mattress at your hospital. You might get something you didn't expect to see under there. So who replaces the mattress? If your HCM department isn't managing the beds, who's going to replace the mattress? Are you got it on a Hillrom contract? Are they going to manage all of that and order mattresses for you and make sure that they get to the site and switch them out? I mean, another thing to look at is how old are your mattresses? You might be, if you never look, you might be surprised. Some of those foam mattresses, they don't last, they don't last forever. After they start to break down, you'll get a divot in the middle and it's uncomfortable for the patient. Every now and then it hasn't happened in a while. It's probably because we're replacing the mattresses, but when we first took on the beds, I would get these letters from my patient experience director or their team. They would send me letters from patients that were just talking about how uncomfortable they were in that bed, and like maybe there was a depression in the middle that now their back hurts from it, and they tried to tell somebody, or they didn't, either their concern didn't get met for some reason. So mattress breakdown can cause patient dissatisfaction. Are you replacing the mattresses at your facility at the recommended interval? You know, we all, some of us have AEM programs, so we pick and choose what we want to follow manufacturer guidelines for, what we don't. There are some choices that we can't make based on regulatory requirements, but this is one that I decided to adhere to their guidelines because of what I was seeing with the patient experience. And I haven't seen many of those complaints lately about the foam mattresses. But are we going to go up there every week and look at the mattresses? No, we don't have that amount of time. But at least if your HCM department is managing the beds, we get to look at the mattress during a repair, and you also get to look at it in your planned maintenance session. So we can say with confidence that we're checking it whenever we get in front of that bed. So at least somebody's doing it.
You guys are an easy way to tell how old a mattress is?
Oh, good question, Chris. Thanks for asking that. Most of those foam mattresses come with a tag and the date printed on it, but it will fade away, especially if they are wiping down the areas and they get some of that wipe on the tag. It'll start to fade. So what we've been doing is we just mark the date and we replace it with a Sharpie. That way we can always see it and know what year it was replaced in. Good question.
We repair our mattresses with that, like a $half size spare.
Yeah.
You guys do that?
Sometimes it depends on the surface. Sometimes the mattress topper will be, too close to the cost of a replacement to worry about it. But we do, especially on the air mattresses, we replace the topper a lot. And sometimes they develop little holes, and if we're not looking at that, who's going to notice? You know, that's the question. Sometimes, you know, the air mattresses that we have, they have the ability to blow air all the time. It's called low air loss, and so it's meant to wick away moisture for the patient's body and prevent skin breakdown. But if we're not checking that and making sure that topper is good, that might be compromised. That function might be compromised. Another thing about that, you know, you can use your work orders. Once you start working on beds, you're going to get data about problems that the nurses have, and this is when we can really help. You know, we can highlight training needs. And you can find problems that you didn't even know you had just by looking at your work orders. And one thing about the air mattress, I mentioned that low air loss feature. Sometimes work orders would be placed that the motor won't stop, or this bed is loud. It's constantly running, and we would go up there and look at the bed and determine that there's nothing wrong with this bed. It sounds just like the rest of them. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And sometimes we could get to the staff that submitted that work order, and they would say, yeah, the patient made a complaint, you know, that it was too loud. He said the motor wouldn't stop. So if the nurses don't even know about that function, about that low air loss feature, and that what it's there to do and to help the patient, and they can't explain to that patient, no, sir, ma'am, that's supposed to be like that, is to prevent your skin from, you know, accumulating moisture underneath that or on top of the mattress. So I know it might be a little bit annoying, but it's for your best interest. If they can't explain that to them, then, you know, the patient doesn't know that's happening. That's where we can come in and help them. A lot of the staff didn't know how to recognize an air versus a foam mattress. So that's where the color-coded things came in. But one of the biggest areas I was able to use the data for is just to highlight training needs and see that, you know, out here at my facility, we need extra attention to the air system, and that whole thing about zeroing the scale and how important that is. That's, if you've got the same kind of beds that I do and that air system, that scale and the patient weight is what it uses to calculate how much pressure it's applying to different areas of the bed. So if the weight's off, it's not going to give that patient the right treatment. And these are things that you constantly, you know, got to kind of explain to them. And we brought in Hillrom, and I let my rep know what we were struggling with, and so they catered their training to what we were having problems with. Another thing we do for the fall committee, we can highlight certain areas that have more trouble than others. About they may be putting in a lot of work orders that we can't duplicate, saying that the bed exit alarm doesn't work. So that's an indication that they need some help, and so we help the fall committee that way.
Ryan, you talked about nurse call.
Yeah.
You guys maintain nurse call. Does the nurse call give you any information? Can you do any reporting?
I wish. I get asked that question a couple times a month at my facility. And our system, when we bought it initially, it did not have any storage. Basically, it's just communication happening. There's nothing that's retaining that data. So I can't pull information out of that system like whatsoever. In order to do that, it needs a significant upgrade. So it would cost us, it is actually budgeted for next year, but it's like $250K for the virtual server that you are actually hosting yourself. You know, it's your server that you spin up. You're simply getting this software tool, and you got to pay $250 to get it, plus an annual SMA, which I hate SMAs unless you actually need it. Sometimes they're a waste of money, in my opinion. But that's what's kind of, whenever administration hears the price tag on that upgrade, that's kind of where it usually dies. But I think this year it's actually going to get done because you need it. Like, if you're trying to figure out why patients are having trouble in certain areas about whether they're complaining that their call wasn't answered on time, you got nothing to look at if you can't extract data and see how many calls came in on the 6th floor and or the 7th floor, whichever one, how long did it take before they got answered? So hopefully we get that soon. During the pandemic, or any time really, even before the pandemic, sometimes we would experience high volumes, and I'm sure you guys are you understand sometimes in our line of work you have to like triage certain devices that come in when they break because there's extras, and you might have a lot of PMs that month, or there just may be a lot going on, so you have to set something aside and say we'll fix that next week, or it can wait. So usually that's what happens with the beds, because we have so many, we do have extra beds at my facility. So we try not to let them stack up too much, but every now and then they do get triaged. And during the pandemic, my hospital, like many others, we got to a point where we were looking for any room that we could put a patient in, get them on a surface, and every space mattered. I saw pictures of some facilities putting patients in their lobby, So if you run into a situation like that and you're providing in-house HTM support for your beds, you have the ability to focus efforts more on the beds, and that's what we did. When we saw that surge, we were able to repair 90% of the beds within a day off just simple repairs or parts that we already had, and get parts on order for overnight delivery on the ones that we couldn't fix that day. And we didn't have a lot of beds that were down, but it was enough to keep us busy that day and get a lot of beds back into use. So if you got in-house support, that's immediate support on anything, and you guys know that. So if you aren't already taking care of the beds, the biggest problem and reluctance that most people have is just that sheer amount of work that goes into it. So I wanted to kind of give everybody a look at what it looks like at my facility. And so when you total up everything, that's beds, the nurse call, and stretchers, 0.56 FTE is what we're looking at my site. And we're a 414 bed facility. So if you would have asked me without seeing the data, how many FTEs do you think it takes to repair the beds in the nurse call at your hospital, I would have said closer to 1. That's just off the top of my head what I would think, but the data says it's only half a person at my site. So basically got one of my people, if he spent half his day working on beds every day, that's what it would look like. You might be asking, well, how accurate is your CMMS data? I think it's pretty accurate. I put a high emphasis on accurate documentation, right? And I'm sure most of you do. We're only as good as what we document, and in order to make the right decisions about how to run your program, you got to have accurate labor in there. So the actual amount of time that you spend doing something is important, and I feel like my team knows that, and they do their best to give accurate depictions of their time. So I stand behind this look, and I took it a step further, and so basically this is 24 months of data, and then I did that how many hours per month to get the FTE. But then I also wanted to see, well, how many FTEs per bed? Like we needed like a general ruler to gauge each person's department. So I took just my licensed bed count and divided that by the FTEs. So that way you can take this and extrapolate. If you've got a 500 bed site, you're looking at about 0.68 FTE to provide the level of support that we do at my hospital. So you might be thinking, well, what about a contract? Why don't we just put it on a contract, right? Yeah, you could. That's the easy option. But is that the best choice, right? Is that the best choice for the patients and the staff? I don't know. I don't think so. Are they going to be at your facility to help with all these problems as often as we can be? If they threw enough of their resources at it, sure, they could. But are they going to do that?
Where do you get your bed parts from?
We mainly buy our parts from the OEM. And the reason is because in my opinion, they don't have inappropriate pricing for their parts. It's fair price that we pay for parts. We haven't really looked at some of the other vendors yet for that. So that's not a knock on them. I can't speak poorly about any vendor that's selling bed parts. We haven't really needed to go there.
Just a striker, I have to buy
Okay.
a whole motor piece. It's just a little plastic. It's broken.
Yeah, I can't speak to that because we have all hill-round beds at my hospital. But yeah, striker, if they're operating their bed program the same way they do like the surgical side, then it's probably bad news for buying parts from.
So Ryan, too, one of the things that you could do at your facility is negotiate with Texoma for reduced cost of the part.
Yeah,
So we use our leverage, our capital leverage, buy beds exclusively from Texoma. On the back end, you get.
well, there you go. That's why our part prices are so good, because Chris did the legwork already. So make sure you talk to them at the time of purchase. You know, we want to discount our parts. I knew it.
But that doesn't mean we don't buy anything from Trigger, right, Mike? I don't know if anybody here goes to Trigger.
But yeah, so you're gonna get quick service. We all know that. High level of support if your HTM department's doing what we usually do. And we've saved about $272,000 since 2016, back in October of 2016. So, and that's pure savings. That's got the parts, the price of the parts taken out of the savings, and also the labor hours from the HTM. So,
That savings compared against a contracted
Yes.
program,
yes, yeah, and
we're around the same.
yeah. So you can save a lot of money doing beds, and like I said, it seems like most of you guys are already managing beds. So a lot of people are reluctant based on the amount of work and the volume that you're going to see. But as long as you can justify more staff, why not? It's one way that we can really provide value, and many of you probably know that because you're already doing it. So, but that's all I've got.